Welcome to Emerging with Jamal Robinson, a podcast where you hear from the diverse voices behind emerging technologies and gain useful insights for positive changes in your life and career. On today's show, I speak with Ryan Jones. 3 months, all expense paid travel. Where are you going?
I had a thing for Greece. I think I saw a picture of Santorini when I was younger and just something about the white architecture against that blue ocean I've always loved. I feel like I have to check Greece off before I do anything else.
Who do you admire the most and why?
As cliched as this may sound, I really like how Barack Obama handled his rise to glory, all of the press and the pressure and the stressors that came along with that role with running for office. But LeBron James is another one. And it's not necessarily for the athletic prowess, although that is definitely something to be admired, but it's more about how they've handled everything.
Who is your favorite music artist, and what is your favorite song or album?
So my favorite artist would have to be Jay-Z. My favorite album is Superfly by Curtis Mayfield.
What is your most unusual skill or talent?
My 11-year-old daughter would say getting on her nerves. Ever since I was a child myself, I've just been able to process large amounts of information very rapidly and kind of dictate what my next best decision should be.
Who is your favorite author, or what is your favorite book?
The autobiography of Malcolm X, I think, is something that everyone reads kind of in those preteen years and kind of discover who you are as a black man via reading that. It's Your Ship by Rear Admiral William McFadden. David Goggins, to read that book or to listen to the audiobook and to hear it in his voice talk about some of the adversity he's faced and just the attitude that he approached things with.
Give 1 to 3 words that define you the best.
Energetic, passionate, determined.
What is your favorite movie?
The Last Dragon is always going to be my favorite movie.
What is your favorite TV show?
80s sitcoms, right? Those black family sitcoms that used to come on. If it's Family Matters, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, In the House, the Seinfeld. I thought that the writing was next level.
If you had a last meal, what would that be?
There was a restaurant called the Banana Cafe. It was a Cuban restaurant. And they had this 3 overstuffed peppers. One had ground chicken, one had beef, and one had like a mixture of seafood.
Sounds like a good way to go. Ryan is a Senior Director of Enterprise Industry Sales at Microsoft. He has a depth of sales experience, currently leading a team of customer-obsessed account managers focused on selling into Microsoft's top enterprise accounts. Ryan has previously led sales to the Navy, Marine Corps, and Department of Defense, at Verizon's Wireless and Enterprise Solutions divisions, and also has provided sales coaching in the Adapt and Advance business he founded to help clients grow revenue, maximize profits, and expand their business operations. Ryan is a servant leader, a board member on a youth development nonprofit that has helped hundreds of children, a board member on the Blacks at Microsoft Affinity group, supporting the continued growth of Black and brown people across Microsoft, and a thoughtful husband and father. I know you're going to enjoy the conversation with Ryan today. Let's get on to the show. Welcome to the show. Can you please provide your full name, title, and company?
Sure. My name is C. Ryan Jones. It's Collis Ryan Jones. I'm a Regional Enterprise Sales Director at Microsoft.
Can you provide how long you've been in the role, what you do on a day-to-day basis, and an overview of sales at Microsoft?
Yeah, absolutely. I have been with Microsoft now 6.5 years. I've been a sales director for the last 2.5 years. I've led industry teams within the Northeast area. Our customers vary across different industry types. The majority of them will either have a headquarter location within the Northeast, or there's a Northeast office that perhaps manages the contract that customer does commerce with Microsoft against. Day-to-day varies. Again, sales is always going to be an eclectic, fast-paced, dynamic role. Today, for example, we had an executive briefing with one of the larger companies that we manage on the East Coast. That's then led by some coaching, some ideation and strategy sessions with some of my sellers. There's customer follow-ups, there's relationships to manage and nourish. And then as any good sales director knows, there's always forecast information, managing through funnels, checking down on opportunities and making sure they're still on track to close when expected.
You currently are a Senior Director managing a group of regional sellers. Can you provide the differences between your current role as a leader of sellers versus your prior role as an individual contributor in sales?
I'm a former college athlete, so a lot of my analogies come back to sports. And so being the seller, you're the player on the team. Your job, your responsibility is to deliver a set performance against the targeted quota or budget number, and you have a set number of accounts to work with, or in other sales roles, your responsibility may lie in bringing in new logos and bringing in new business opportunities for that company. Um, as a manager, you're the coach. And so not all great players make great coaches, right? I think that there's a transition there. There's an understanding that as the coach of the team, now it's all about having collective success. And so I may have one or two sellers that are heads and tails above the rest of the team, and that's great. My focus needs to be on how do I bring the rest of the team up to match that. A lot of the work that's done in management roles isn't always seen. I had a mentor at one point who said a good manager doesn't really do anything, they just make things happen. A lot of times it's removing obstacles so that my players or my sellers can perform the way that they need to. Oftentimes it's falling on the sword and maybe helping them through certain scenarios or certain escalations. At the end of the day, though, it's acting as an owner of the business and delivering an efficiently run business that produces the expected results. There are all types of hats that you wear as a sales leader. Every now and then you're a coach. Sometimes you're a psychiatrist. Sometimes you're a mediator. Sometimes you're just a confidant that they can talk to. Oftentimes you're an advisor that they may run strategy by, and they're relying on you to provide guidance or expertise or affirmation if they're doing the right things. So the role varies in nature. I think the most important thing and the most important part of the leadership role is servant, right? You're a servant leader. You are serving your constituency, your team, the people that report to you, the people that are delivering the results that you're managing over. And then as an individual seller, you're serving those clients, those customers that you're building that relationship with. Sales sometimes gets a bad rap. And there are plenty of folks out here who maybe will just try to sell a product just to make a quick buck, or they'll sell someone something that they don't need. I think that trust is vital. And so I like to operate in the spirit of trust. Customers that have worked with me, sales teams that have worked with me, they know that whatever I'm contributing to that relationship, it's something that's going to benefit them in the long run. There are no bait and switch opportunities. We don't sell technology that people don't need. We sell to them tools and technology that they can use to either optimize their operations or drive new revenue.
Sales often gets a bad rap, almost to the level of a sleazeball lawyer chasing behind an ambulance to secure a client while the client is still injured. Can you provide any insights on why sales has gotten this bad rap and how you and or your team differentiate yourselves as sellers with integrity?
There's an exchange there. There's an exchange of generally of money or time. And so if you as the purchaser or the customer, if you feel that your time or your money was wasted, well, then you're going to feel some way about the person who sold you, right? That engagement, that product that you went into. There is an opportunity to have a very lucrative financial stability within the sales arena. And so I think for that reason, there's a lot of people that enter into that business and they're just looking to make a quick buck. I think that as a seller, we talked about the concept of servitude. If you're not serving people, if you are not doing something to make their lives better in some way, shape, or form, then you're missing the boat. My sales career started at the age of 16, waiting tables at a restaurant in Washington, D.C. Now that I look back on it, I don't know if I probably should have been waiting tables right at that age, but I was a tall kid and I knew the people that owned the restaurant. And I quickly learned from one of the customers who would come in every day that, hey, anyone can bring me a cup of coffee, but it takes someone who's establishing a relationship, who understands what I need in order to serve me as a customer. When I have someone that serves me, there's a relationship, there's an inherent trust that is now built up, which leads to repeat customers and the opportunity to kind of expand those relationships. And so that was a lesson that I learned very early that I've taken into my sales career. It's always, what can I do to serve you? Not necessarily what can I sell you in order to make a quick buck and then run away.
I love this idea of positioning sales as a role that is a servant to customers' needs, where the seller listens and helps drive desired business outcomes versus trying to get the customer to make a purchase that may help the seller but not the customer. With that said, I'm sure you still run into people that are intimidated by sales, quotas, and hitting their numbers. Do you have an example of someone you've coached that didn't think they were a seller, but you were able to help them step into the role and thrive?
Tons, none more prevalent than a young lady with at Verizon. And so maybe 12 years ago now at this point, there was someone that I was working with. I was managing the Navy and the Marine Corps business for Verizon, and it was a fairly large contract. It was a very complex customer. There were all sorts of details and specifics with which we needed to engage with them, provide reporting, provide billing, et cetera, et cetera. I had an opening on my sales team to manage the Navy and Marine Corps in the Washington, D.C. area. There was a young lady that I had worked with who was in contract implementations that I reached out to and struck up a conversation about, hey, have you ever thought about moving over to this type of a role? I think initially some of those concerns around quota attainment and I've got to hit the number. And, when you're in sales, there's a certain part of your income that's not guaranteed. It's a performance play. And so, yes, you have the opportunity to over exceed your number. But if you don't hit your number, well, you're not getting paid in certain instances. And so we had those conversations. I introduced her to a number of people who are already in the role to kind of talk through it. But I knew that this young lady had an understanding of the Navy contract that, quite frankly, as a manager, I didn't have time to teach. And I could tell her how to sell. I could coach her on how to sell in the same motions and the time that I was spending with the rest of my sales team. But to bring in an experienced seller and then teach them the nuances of this contract, it just wasn't going to be an effective use of time. There was going to be a learning ramp to it that the business just couldn't afford. Also, what came to mind was that this young lady was pretty high up within her role. And so, there was a slight pay cut that she had to take from a salary perspective. We built that trust up. And to this day, I thank my lucky stars that she trusted me enough to kind of take that leap into the sales arena. 12 years later, she has a super successful sales career. She's worked with public sector, private sector. She did very well at the company that we were at. She actually joined Microsoft a few years later, completely on her own, right? She was recruited and brought in and is now delivering stellar results. We have conversations about this all the time, and she's listening. She's probably laughing, knowing that I'm talking about her. And yes, Michelle Walker, I am talking about you right now, but that's been one of the biggest accomplishments, I would say, of my leadership career thus far, was seeing someone that I knew had the opportunity and the talent to do it, convincing them to do it, and then being able to stand back and watch the success that she's attained and continues to attain in this field. So it's certainly possible. I think that, again, people just kind of need to take that fear, really dissect what that fear is, and then put it behind them and use it as a propulsion system to drive them forward.
Appreciate that story, and you highlight Michelle, as this is Women's History Month, and we want to highlight and give voice to the many women across corporate America and global enterprises. You mentioned you worked at Verizon, a telecommunications company selling into the Navy and Marine Corps. Now you're at Microsoft, a tech company selling IT software and services into enterprises. Do you believe sales is domain specific, or can a seller take on any sales role regardless of the products and services being sold?
I would say that a good seller can sell anything. I think that the lyric, "I could sell salt to a slug," comes to mind.
Or, Jay-Z slightly more elegant, "I sell ice in the winter, I sell fire in hell. I am a hustler, baby. I'll sell water to a well."
Yeah. Right. Well, I'll tell you a quick story. So when I made the transition from Verizon to Microsoft, I had a reality check. At Verizon, I was a subject matter expert. So I kind of knew everything, right? And so I'd come up through retail. I had done enterprise, corporate. I had done industry sales. I pivoted to government at one point and then got into operations roles. I wanted to get back to enterprise. Enterprise was more of my passion. It moved at the speed of light. That's what I liked, right? That was the environment that I liked to sell in. When I transitioned to Microsoft, I wasted about 90 days trying to learn all things Microsoft and to adapt the same approach that had worked so well for me at Verizon. It didn't work. And so what I learned in that and what I've coached sellers, particularly new sellers that I brought into Microsoft, you have to focus on what your customer wants. That's really where the opportunity is. Your customer is at a certain point in their transformation journey. The industry is at another point, maybe further ahead, maybe further behind. The ideal future state is at a different point. Your delta as a salesperson, like that's where you live, is within the delta, within that opportunity. How do I help these people get from point A to point B? And so you have to become surgical almost in terms of what those industry priorities are, what those trends are, what their business environment is, and then bringing the right introductions, the right recommendations, the right referrals to them in order to drive the business in the direction that they need to go in. So I would say that's probably the biggest thing that I've learned is to focus on the customer and to kind of let that drive your selling actions. Certain sales personalities fit in certain sales environments. But a good seller can sell anything because they know to focus on what's important for their customer.
You've talked about selling into specific industries, but there are also technology domains sellers have to focus on. How do you advise sellers, or how do you approach areas like artificial intelligence, quantum computing, mixed reality, and other emergent technologies that the average seller may not have any experience with, but their customers may have interest in and want to converse about?
I focus on the business solutions that technology drives. And I think that it's going to be really hard for someone to attempt to become as technically versed in some of these advanced technologies as someone who spent their entire career in it will, right? I would never attempt to match technical wits with the CIO or a CTO because they're going to find out in the first 30 seconds that, I'm not who I'm portraying myself to be. But I can talk business solutions. I can talk to customer engagement. I can talk to strategy. I can talk to how do they interact with their end customer in such a way that is appealing. And then the technology conversation is just that. It's a conversation about the technology that helps you to achieve that business outcome. But I think that really the main thing is to focus on the business outcome. They're adapting technology for a reason. What is that reason? And then how do I help them achieve that goal?
Great answer. I always tell people artificial intelligence is just the newest tool someone is using to drive a desired business outcome, but as soon as it's cheaper, more efficient, easier to understand and or use technology surfaces, the majority will drop the old tech for the new tech, as it's never really about the tech, but it's about achieving the desired business outcome that the technology drives. You are in a somewhat unique situation as a seller, as you work at a company that has a pretty large and diverse portfolio of products and services. How do you determine what to focus on?
That's a fascinating one. So again, I tend to focus on what is of interest to my customers, but I'll tell you the ones that I'm just kind of personally passionate about. I like the dynamic suite, right? I like that those business applications lead to different conversations with chief revenue officers, chief human resources officers, and they're not necessarily stuck in the IT department, if you will. Outside of that, I love Azure, right? I think that just the idea of cloud computing and kind of where we're seeing the advancement of that technology, I think that we're just kind of scratching the surface of it. And so I think that the concept of Azure and where Azure could potentially lead to, I think that's fascinating. One of my favorite things about Microsoft is just the integration of all these different things across that singular platform. And so I think that's where the real value proposition of the company is. Most enterprises are already using the modern work solutions that we have within the Office suite. It's being able to tie all these other products in and just kind of have that ubiquitous presence across the customer's environment.
For a non-seller, I could see where a large portfolio of services and ever-changing customer demands on those services can be intimidating. But I assume in these complex enterprise sales negotiations, you and your team aren't going this alone. What type of resources do you have around you to support you during these sales efforts?
There's a ton. And I think that's one of the most intimidating things about selling at Microsoft compared to maybe selling at a telecommunications company. At Verizon, I may have had 2 or 3 different technical counterparts that would come with me into sales calls or resources that I could lean on. At Microsoft, even in a small low-touch account, there could be upwards of 30 people that are all calling on that account. When you get into some of the larger strategic accounts, there's even more. The way that I like to position it to people, particularly folks that come from the outside, is that think of every Microsoft seller or every product specialist as a musical instrument. Your job as that account director, as that account manager, is to be the conductor of the orchestra. And so how do you make sure that the music that your customer is hearing is this harmonious tone versus this cacophony of loud noises? And so again, if you focus on the business outcome that the customer is looking to drive, you can bring the right resource in who can go as deep into the weeds as they need to. Some people, they live for that. I've got people that would love nothing more than just to wax on poetically about artificial intelligence and quantum computing. That's not for me. What I'm about is the business outcome that's driving and how that's going to help that firm either make more money, save money, or fundamentally change the way with which they position themselves to the market.
Great answer. I'm reminded of the 2018 Post Conference session, how Microsoft is building the world's largest customer success team with John Jester, who at the time was the Microsoft Corporate VP of Customer Success. From that session, which I'll link to in the show notes, I took away the contrast of what I call the mainframe model of approaching a customer, selling them a mainframe, walking away for 3 to 5 years until it's time to sell another one, versus the current software and services, just call it Spotify model, that has customers subscribing to and or paying for a service on a monthly basis. And if that customer isn't happy by the end of the month, they'll be going to their competitor. So hence the need for a deeper customer engagement, leading to the rise of the customer success function in account teams and significant focus on churn. Does this resonate with you, and how have you seen sales change over the years in meaningful ways?
That's what's so interesting about the Verizon and Microsoft transition. When I was at Verizon, I was selling, particularly when I was on the wireless side, I'm selling a subscription service. And so I was used to management terms such as ARPU, average revenue per user, and looking to drive subscriber growth, and what are the key indications of churn. And, we were talking about digital transformation in the 2000s. And so when I came into Microsoft and the pivot from on-premise to cloud software was starting, and now we're moving into this subscription model, I was well prepared for that. I think that what customers expect, gone are the days of you're selling me this product and I'll see you in 2 to 3 years when it's time to re-up, right? Customers expect you to be on that transformation journey with them. As well you should be, because again, it opens up opportunities. At Microsoft, at a company where we make products that help every person and organization on the planet achieve more, you need to have those constant checkpoints to ensure that the technology is doing what it's supposed to do, that it is helping everyone across all spectrums of human existence achieve more in what they're looking to do. And if there are opportunities to improve the product, to improve the delivery, to improve the relationship, you don't want to find out about that when it's time to renegotiate the contract, right? Those are things that, as with any relationship, that communication needs to be there in as close to real time as possible so that the proper adjustments and improvements can be made.
You mentioned effective and timely communication, a soft skill critical to most roles, relationships, and really basic human existence. As you've been in sales for some time, have coached people to success, and now actively lead a team of sellers, what are the other skills and resources you'd recommend people gain who are interested in pursuing this career path?
I think that soft skills are probably the most important thing that is not always addressed. You have to be able to stand in front of an audience and succinctly deliver a compelling argument to go one way or the other. So I think that some of those soft skills, some of those executive presence skills, there are obviously different sales methodologies. Challenger methodology, for example, is one of my favorite. Axiom sales training I've been through. We had a number of different methodologies and philosophies that I've seen introduced to different companies throughout the years. But at the end of the day, it's people talking to people. And you need to be able to talk to people and to convey your point. You need to be able to orchestrate success with large teams, with a lot of different stakeholders. So stakeholder engagement and then balancing stakeholder expectations is important. I don't think that there is a single soft skill that's more important than your communication style. I look for a certain ambition, a certain tenacity in a seller. It's not always going to be roses. There are going to be some really tough days. So I look at people who can weather those storms and continue pushing forward. Or if they reach a wall, how do you get around it? How do you get over it? How do you get through it? What are the different ways that you can think? Typically, a salesperson is going to be someone that hears no quite often, right? Do you just quit after the first no? Do you quit after the fifth no, right? What if the sixth time you ask, the answer is yes? So I think there's a balance between tenacity and, just getting on someone's nerves. But I think that if you're communicating properly and you're establishing that trust, then it's possible to have success in this role.
A lot of people don't have the ability to consistently hear no, and hear no on a majority of the opportunities they're looking to drive. What did you do, or what do you hear other effective sellers doing to build that resilience?
I think practice makes perfect. There's that estimate to it. Anyone who's expecting to succeed the first time they try anything is setting themselves up for some severe disappointment. I think that doing the right thing for people, doing the right thing by people will oftentimes lead to that yes or that acceptance that you're looking for. I think there's also a common sense factor that comes into play. Sometimes it's not the right time. Sometimes there isn't the need for it. Sometimes there just isn't the budget for it. Sometimes there are extenuating circumstances. So I think that the better you understand your customer or your client's objectives, their motives, what they're trying to get done, the better you can align yourself to that. Sometimes it's not going to work. And I think that in cases where it doesn't work, it's best to still remain that air of professionalism, wish them the best on their journey. You never know, right, when those paths may intersect again. So I think it is just as important as learning how to handle the no as it is learning how to get to the yes, and then all the things that come after that.
Very well said. Let's now transition to learn more about you, your background, and what has gotten you into this place in life. One of the first things I've learned about you is your passion for enablement of Black and brown people. We met at a conference in D.C. hosted by the Executive Leadership Council, an independent nonprofit founded in 1986 that opens channels of opportunities for the development of Black executives. When our company didn't sponsor your attendance, you came out of your own pocket and paid thousands of dollars to be there in support of others and to learn. You've also taken on a significant role at Microsoft's Employee Resource Group, BAM, or Blacks at Microsoft. Where did your passion for enabling Black and brown people come from?
A lot of that started with my parents telling me stories of my grandparents, right? And, some of the struggles that they had to deal with. And I think that as I grew up as a young Black kid in Washington, D.C., and I saw different elements of our city, right? I saw the glory of the city, and I also saw some of the seedier, shadier parts of the city. And you learn to kind of love and appreciate it all. And then I think when you get to around maybe 12 or 13, you really start understanding the struggle that our people have had to gone through. And the fact that a number of these civil rights and liberties that we all enjoy today were not possible 60, 70 years ago. So you start thinking about your ancestors and what they went to just for you to have the opportunity to be in that class or to be in that program. Who are you to waste that opportunity or to waste that chance? I think there's far too many of us that got content with access until that access was threatened. I love this newer generation that's more concerned about equity. And not only do we want access, but we want ownership, and we want equity, and we want to leave a legacy behind for us. And so I'm someone that was connected to a lot of people in my career. People saw something in me. And so they took the time to invest in me because they knew something that I didn't know at that time. So I feel that it's my duty to do the same and to invest in others.
Definitely. The word legacy and the fact that we're both Jay-Z fans triggered thoughts in my head of Jay's song under the same name. He and you are both highlighting the importance of the legacy you leave for others. You are actively building a legacy at work through your contributions with Microsoft's Black Employee Resource Group. Can you speak more about your experience and how you got involved?
My BAM story is interesting. I mean, everybody has their own story. When I came to Microsoft in the fall of 2016, I was surrounded by brilliant people. There were not a lot of Black people in the room. And I recall asking someone, where is everyone, right? I had come from an environment where, if we weren't the majority, there was decent representation. I just wasn't seeing that at Microsoft. So someone said, hey, there's this group called Blacks at Microsoft. And my first thought was, that's what you guys call yourselves? And then I went to the meeting to go check it out. And I said, I went to a predominantly white school. I said, oh, this is like the Black Student Union. Like, thanks, but no thanks. Like, this is cool, but maybe not. A few years went by. I would see some programming here and there. I might go to a happy hour event. I might go to an event where they're partnering with an employee resource group from another company. I went to the BAM conference in Redmond in 2019. It was the 30th anniversary of BAM. And there I saw thousands of us across different disciplines, different leadership roles, different parts of the world. So then I kind of understood what that community was. I came back the next year to see that community and with the intention of really looking for my next opportunity. What was going to be the next job that I was looking for? Maybe my next boss was here, or maybe someone that worked in a department that I wanted to get to was here. There was a gentleman named Curtis Clay who called all the brothers into a room, said, brothers, you all are missing the boat because the sisters are here within BAM leadership and they're engaging with the leaders and they're able to drive policy. And not only are they getting their own exposure, but they're really able to drive progress. And I'm not seeing enough in you in there. So I'm issuing a personal challenge to everyone to go back to their chapter and to volunteer for a leadership role. Well, 2 weeks later, COVID started. And so as a father of young children who likes to be there for his kids, in the pre-COVID world, I didn't think I could be there for events and happy hours and after work stuff because I'm running around with my children. But in a virtual world that COVID created, I could do just that. I've always had a passion for career development, so I ran for the career development lead for the DC chapter. I brought a lot of events. We talked about nonprofit board work. We talked about executive presence. We put on events that started to attract a national audience. And before you know it, now I'm doing these monthly power hours with anywhere from 300 to 700 people on them. The following year, someone approached me about running for a vice chairperson role within a local chapter. Vice chair is a 2-year assignment. You do 1 year as vice chair, 1 year as chair. I decided that I still had more that I could offer to the community. I wanted to continue to help uplift people. I wanted to bring other people along on this journey. And so I took that role on. And as I took on now a chair leader role, there's the opportunity to get more engaged with worldwide. And again, my passion's always been career development. And so this particular fiscal year, not only do I run the DC chapter for Blacks at Microsoft, but I've been able to be elected as the worldwide career development lead. That's led to engagements with Microsoft employees across the globe. Talking to BAM members in Ireland and Portugal and South Africa about the career development that they're bringing to their teams, working with different vendors and external partners on ways to benefit the employee experience of Blacks at Microsoft, as well as to increase retention rates and help with recruiting efforts and pipeline generation, and then ultimately helping more and more folks get into a leadership role. So it's absolutely been a labor of love. I have built some relationships with some employee resource groups outside of Microsoft. We may be industry competitors, but we're all, Black people in America, in corporate America, looking to advance. So it's one of those opportunities to kind of lift as you climb.
In addition to being a board member of BAM, you're also on the board of directors for the nonprofit Beacon House. Can you explain more about that organization and their mission?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Beacon House is actually something that my BAM journey brought me to. And so I had a friend, Conrad Woody, that we brought in to do a session on preparing for corporate board readiness. We had a lot of interest in that, but a lot of folks that really weren't senior enough in career or ready for corporate board experience. And so we brought in Glenn Ogilvie, who was the CEO for the Center of Nonprofit Advancement here in Washington, D.C. You brought him in the next month, and Glenn did a session on nonprofit board leadership. And his organization has had a training program called a board match program, where they would take you through a training that was offered pro bono by the DC Law Association. And then they would take a survey and they would pair you with different nonprofits in the area that kind of matched. I love the sound of that. And so I signed up for it. I went through the training. Again, professional development, right? That sort of continuous improvement cycle. And the 3 nonprofits that they sent to me, well, I don't even really remember what the other 2 were, because Beacon House was top of the list. And so Beacon House is located in the Edgewood Terrace housing development, which is a project that I rode by every single day of high school. It's 2.2 miles away from the house that I was born and raised in Northeast DC. I had friends that lived in the community. My first job was a few blocks away. My high school girlfriend lived around the corner. So I knew this place. I knew this place well. I knew the kids that came out of this place. And I saw an opportunity to kind of give back to an organization that was doing important work for kids that were growing up and not too far from the neighborhood that I grew up in. And so Beacon House's mission is to provide, after school academic support and athletic programs to really help the children of the Edgewood Commons neighborhood and really Ward 5 in general in Northeast DC. Grow up in an environment where they're surrounded by people who are inspiring them, who are pouring into them, who are helping to show them that there is a path, out of some of the situations and the scenarios that you may have found yourselves in. There's incredibly important work that's being done at this organization from both an academic and an athletic perspective. It's an amazing organization that I'm just proud to be a part of. I'm proud to amplify the work that they're doing there and to continue connecting them to corporate resources. As that organization looks to go on for another 30 years. We just celebrated the 30-year anniversary last year. Hundreds, if not thousands of kids that have come through this program, some that are in college now, some that have gone on to NFL careers, others that have gone on to great professional success. And again, as a kid of Northeast DC, as a product of DC Public Schools, I just think that I have a duty to help accelerate the path to success for some of these kids, because I am in a position where I can do that because somebody did that for me. And If all things work out, they will in turn do that for someone else.
You mentioned Barack Obama earlier, and as you were talking, I was thinking of Michelle Obama, who made it into Ivy League schools like Princeton and Harvard, but realized that most others from her community didn't have the same opportunities, and she spent a significant portion of her career trying to make sure that people from those communities that she could relate to got the same resources and access that she did. I realized the complexities for people like her and you, who in addition to BAM and being board members and on a nonprofit, you also have a career aspirations, family obligations, a group of friends, hobbies, interests, and other things. How are you able to find balance across all these areas without burning out and still honoring the obligations to your family, friends, and self?
The concept of work-life balance is a myth. It doesn't exist. Something's going to get compromised. Um, what I have attempted to do, and sometimes I succeed and sometimes I probably fail, um, I attempt to balance as best as I can, but there are some things that I can't do. Now, my family is always going to be a priority. And so it's more important for me to kiss my kids goodnight and to see them in the morning than maybe it is for a certain level of financial success or titles or things of that nature. I do look for opportunities to, maybe do things at the same time, right? So if I have a business conference, maybe where I've got to travel and I've got to go somewhere, well, maybe that's an opportunity to take my family somewhere and kind of show them a different part of the country or a different part of the world that they haven't seen. And maybe there's a day before, day after that conference where I can kind of spend that quality time. But while I'm working, that's an opportunity for them to explore and learn some new things. I'm big on bringing my family out to different Beacon House events, other community service events. I think it's important that our kids see the concept of giving back and that they grow up and they have sort of that civic duty, that responsibility ingrained in them. So I'm very big on that piece of it as well. In the instances where work or extracurricular activities take me away, I'm not able to be there for my family in some way, shape, or form. Um, I don't want to call it a barter system, but I'll attempt to either do something grandiose and excellent for them either before that time where I'm out of pocket or immediately afterwards, right? So if I'm gone 2, 3 weeks somewhere, they know that like when daddy's coming home, like we're going to have a great time because I need to make up for this time that's been missed. Particularly with small children, it's just, you don't get that back. And I've talked to a number of leaders throughout my career who have traveled, right? Who maybe have had family in one part of the country, but their work was in another part of the country, and so they're only kind of home on the weekends. That's not worth it to me. There have been roles that I have turned down, lucrative roles that I've turned down because I still need to maintain somewhat of a balance in my life as best as I can. So, the day that the work that I do is more important than the family that I have at home, that's the day that I need to quit that job. Because at the end of that day, the end of our life, family that's what it's about, right? It's about spending that time with my wife, my children, watching them grow, and being the father and the husband that they expect me to be.
Well said. I love the idea of mental accounting and actively tracking the trade offs with family to make sure core aspects of your life is not at a deficit while your employer sits at a surplus as it relates to your time invested. I really appreciate you coming on today and dropping so much knowledge for me and the listeners. Is there anything else you'd like to leave to the listeners who want to follow any of the aspects of your path, be it a nonprofit organization or taking on a role in an employee resource group to drive change at work, or sales, or any of the other things you mentioned today?
Yeah, I think that just like a corporation or a nonprofit has a board of directors, I think everyone needs to have their own personal board of directors. And so, who are the people that you're going to? Who are the networks that you're engaging with to get that advice from people to understand kind of the best way to maneuver through the various challenges that life may present. I think you need to be a constant learner. So there's a great quote that I heard from Satya that I believe is actually attributed to Mahatma Gandhi when I started. And he said, you should live every day as if it's your last, but you should learn every day as if you'll live forever. And so I look to embody that. And then finally, I would say attempt to live in a spirit of gratitude. There are going to be things that aren't going to work out in your favor. There are going to be days when it seems that all is lost. I think it's important to focus in those moments. What can I be grateful for, right? Depending on, your religious or spiritual affiliations. I'm a Christian, so I always come back to, what am I thankful for God for in this moment? And I have found that attitude has gotten me through a lot of dark days, and it's helped me to see paths forward when the path may seem dismal at best.
Beautifully articulated. We can all benefit from embracing more gratitude in our lives. Ryan, thank you for taking the time out, late on a Friday, away from your family, to be on the show and break down aspects of a career in sales to the listeners. In addition to the other things we've discussed, Ryan somehow has found time to run and found Adapt and Advance, a strategic sales excellence coaching service that helps clients grow revenue, maximize profits, and expand operations, which I'll link to in the show notes if you want to reach out and learn more. Ryan, appreciate the time, energy, and guidance today. Wishing you all the best until we speak again.
My pleasure. Thanks a lot, Jamal. Appreciate it.
That wraps our conversation. Many thanks to Ryan for sharing his story and the gems of knowledge he dropped during the discussion. I end each show with an inspirational career quote. Today's quote reads, "Focusing your life solely on making a buck shows a certain poverty of ambition. It asks too little of yourself, because it's only when you hitch your wagon to something larger than yourself that you realize your true potential," which comes from the 44th President of the United States, Barack Hussein Obama. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you get your podcast, and leave a rating and review, as it really helps to amplify the message so others can discover this content and benefit from it. And we'd love more user-submitted quotes. I plan to read them at the end of each show. Instructions on how to submit those quotes are in the show notes. That's all for today's show. Thanks for listening, and until next time, peace